Okay, cool. Well, we'll wait for the slides. So okay, there we are. So just a little bit about myself. So my name is Carson McKinstry. I am a front-end developer for a company called Logistics LP. We do a lot of oil fields. We're an oil field service company. And so as part of that front-end thing, we got to figure out ways to make things available offline. So one of the things that we have been just basically looking at for the last month or so is this new-ish technology called IndexedDB. So it's a new thing in the HTML5 spec. I think it's been around since about 2015-ish. I think it's been in the spec longer than that. But yeah, so what is it and why should you care? So IndexedDB is in your browser. It is same origin, so it actually follows that policy that you can't access some other origin stuff. It's persistent. It is transactional, so you can do everything you would with a transactional database, and it's offline capable. So if you have any idea about what a PWA is, so a progressive web app, it is great with those. Sadly, it is not ACID compliant for obvious reasons. It's in a browser. The cache can be deleted. It's a nightmare. So why? So why are we thinking about IndexedDB? So before we have IndexedDB, there were a couple different ways to actually store data in the browser. So you could store stuff in cache, you could store stuff in local storage, you could store stuff in web SQL. Problem is, cache is limited to about 4K. And it can be disabled by the user. So local storage is a simple key value store, and web SQL is deprecated. No browser really wanted to basically use it. Everyone was like, I don't want to mess with it. So IndexedDB stepped in to fill some of those gaps. So what this gives us is an indexed NoSQL database that is 100% offline, and it allows us to store large amounts of structured data. So I don't want to get into session storage right now because that's for something completely different, but that's beside the point. So yeah, it works offline. So this is the big thing that is really, really cool for what I do. So we work with a lot of oil fields. So the oil fields obviously are out in the middle of nowhere, and so you can't really do much when it comes to being online. I mean, there are ways to do it, but it's not great. So what we actually have to do is we have to create, we're in the process of creating an app that works, it's a web app that works completely offline, and we're leveraging IndexedDB and what are known as those progressive web apps. So yeah, so this lets us, so why would we want to do this? Why would we want to store things when we're offline? So some of the things that you sort of take for granted is a lot of the drop downs that you see nowadays are typically generated. They get data from a server and they generate that list. So you can store that stuff on the front side, on the front end, and it not be an issue. You can also make, so you can store edits to, say you're working on a Google Doc. So this is actually what they use in the background, is actually they will save edits into IndexedDB, and then once you've got a connection again, or it just does it in the background, it will sync it back up to Google servers. And basically you can do whatever you want to basically your heart's content. Anything you can do with the NoSQL database, you can do with IndexedDB. So there are some caveats. So some of the browsers do cap the limit of data that can be stored. So Firefox is a big one. So they actually will warn the user when they reach about 50 megs. Most of the time it's just as simple, they hit yes and you're good to go. Chrome, on the other hand, will actually create a pool for the browser itself of about 1/3 of your disk space. And then every single app that you've got either on your computer or that's using IndexedDB will share from that. So how do we access it? Yeah, so this is way too much. So the IndexedDB API is atrocious. It's basically like acting directly upon a normal SQL database. It's not fun. It's very verbose, I want to say. So basically what happens is you open up a database, you give it a version, you check to see if it actually opened. You create a transaction, you create an object store, and obviously it gets really, really, really annoying really, really quickly. So one of the things that we use, instead of using, I don't know if you guys can read that. Either way. So the library that we use to actually interact with IndexedDB is called Dexy. So what this does is it just gives us a very, very easy to use interface. So there's no dealing with transactions, so you can still use transactions. But you simply create a new database, you give it a version, you give it a couple stores, and you can use that anywhere that you want. So here's an example of basically putting something into the database. So I've got a new friend, his name is Carson, he's got a shoe size of 13, and I'm putting him into the friends database. So this line right here is actually how we set up it's kind of like a schema in SQL, except it's not really, you don't stick to it. So the very first one is going to be your primary key. So that can be an ID, that can be auto-incrementing, that can be pretty much anything you want. Anything else is anything that you want to be able to run queries on, or what should be indexed. Everything else that you shove into IndexedDB is just another object. So kind of like if you've ever used MongoDB, it's very similar to that. Or Postgres, it's just a JSON-B store. So I've got a shameless plug. So in order to deal with IndexedDB, so you're not always going to be the one dealing with IndexedDB. You're not always going to be the one actually going in and troubleshooting, okay, why is this thing broken? Why is this not saving? Why is it not doing whatever? So I figured, okay, I'd build this is actually a React router plugin. If you ever use React, you basically plug it into a route, and it actually gives you an interface to sort of view what's in the database, make edits if you need to, delete stuff. It's not fully featured yet, but I'm working on it. So this is mainly for our help desk guys, so they don't have to deal with the normal IndexedDB interface. So that's available on NPM and Yarn. So as an example, so I think that's my last slide. So as an example, here I've actually got this loaded up. And can you guys read that? Yes? So let me show you why this is such an important tool. So if you go into your browser and open up the normal console and you open up the application, you've got this IndexedDB store. This isn't fun to deal with. It's pretty much nothing but IDs, and it's not a great way to go through that database. So that's why I built this. So does anybody have any questions about IndexedDB? Go for it.
So I understand that the you're going on this, especially with the pain all side out of oil over to
Right.
What's the benefit of this versus something like using a merge database with the SQL?
Right. So you asked me. So you asked what the advantage of this over something like a merge database. I'm actually not sure what a merge database is. Okay. Yeah, so there actually is ways to do that. So if you've ever used CouchDB, they have basically a client-side version of that called PouchDB that does automatic syncing to that server. So the reason we're using this is because this is just for us, for where we're at with our who we have as developers. This is the easiest way we've got it. But yeah, I'm not 100% sure about what you said. Merge. Oh, right. Right. So we actually do that. So that's actually not what this is for. So this is actually, so IndexedDB and what we're using it for is actually for think of a ticketing system. So our mechanics actually will create a ticket, and that ticket gets saved client side until they've got a connection again. And there's just no easy way to do that without installing something on the person's machine. So that's what we've done in the past. We're trying to get away from that. Yeah.
It's in the browser, like where do you get this?
Right. Right. So that's actually what we're doing right now. Is so they've got. I don't want to go into too detailed about what they're doing, but there is a database on our clients' machines that actually will sync up to our database. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So this is really great for low impact, having a low impact application. It's something that can be updated pretty much on the fly. So whenever they've got, so say we push out a new version, there's no having to go to like Starbucks or go to a somewhere where there's Wi-Fi and download the brand new version. It's also it's cleaner for us. Yeah, good. So versioning, so that's a good question. I'm not 100% sure. So there's a little bit of that in this code right here. So whenever you actually create a new version of a database, it emits an event. So it's this on upgrade needed. And so what you do is you pull everything out of the database, update it to the new schema, or update it to the new, basically make sure that everything fits, and then you shove it right back into the new version. Yeah. Any other questions? Well, cool. Well, thank you for that. So if you have any other questions or want to get a hold of me after this, I'm available pretty much anywhere on the internet with @Carson McKinstry, and I'll make sure to get these slides posted up here in a little bit. Cool. Thank you very much.